Okay, so you know how sometimes you're scrolling through photos online and it's just like color, color, color?
So much color.
Yeah, and it's also perfect, right? Like those filters and everything can be a little much.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like you're craving something that feels more real, you know?
Exactly. A
Yeah,
little more soul, a little less. Perfect.
totally. And that's actually what got me thinking about today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're exploring the power of black and white photography.
Yes, and not with some fancy camera either. We're talking about capturing that timeless feel with the phone you have right in your pocket.
Right. Because when you think about it, black and white photography has this amazing ability to cut through the noise.
It's true. I mean, how many of those super saturated photos are we all going to actually care about in a few years?
Exactly.
Ah,
But black and white photos, they just hit different.
they do. And that's exactly what grabbed my attention about this ebook we're digging into, capturing moments in monochrome. It's like it's giving you permission to ditch the pressure of getting the perfect color and just focus on the soul of the image.
I love that the soul of the image. And the ebook really emphasizes that you don't need a ton of expensive equipment to do this. It's all about using what you have to create something really special.
But okay, be honest. Doesn't good photography, regardless of style, always come down to having a good camera, at least to some degree?
You know, that's the myth this ebook totally debunks. It
Yeah.
says it right out front. No expensive gear needed. And they mean it.
Really? So how do they back that up? What's their secret sauce?
It all comes down to understanding the fundamentals. Things like light composition and connecting with your subject. Those are the elements that truly make a photo great no matter what you're shooting with.
So you're saying black and white can actually be easier for mobile photography. I'll be honest, that sounds a little counterintuitive.
Think of it this way. With black and white, it's all about simplification. You're removing a layer of complexity.
Okay, I can see that. Instead of stressing about whether this color clashes with that one, it's more about the shapes, the texture.
Exactly. The ebook uses this great phrase, when less is more. And it's so true. By stripping away color, you actually allow the essence of the scene to come forward.
That makes sense. It's like you're suddenly less worried about capturing everything perfectly and more in tune with what's actually interesting about what you're seeing.
Right. You're no longer bombarded by color, so you start to notice the subtleties, the way light and shadow play together, the textures, the contrasts. It's really amazing what you start to see when you train your eye to look for it.
But speaking of seeing those subtleties,
Look,
one thing I always struggle with when it comes to phone photography is noise, especially in low light. It's like no matter what I do, those photos always end up looking a little grainy.
oh yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Noise can be frustrating. But you know what's funny? The ebook actually made me rethink noise altogether.
Really? How so?
Well, think about those old film photos, right?
Yeah.
The ones with so much character. A lot of that comes from the grain. It's
Yeah.
part of what makes them visually interesting.
It's true. It's like the green gives it that vintage vibe.
Exactly. So instead of thinking of noise as the enemy capturing moments in monochrome, actually encourages you to see it as another tool in your toolkit.
Huh. Interesting. So like embrace the grain.
Yeah. Use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
A little bit of noise can add a certain mood or feeling to a photo.
Mm-hmm.
It can make a street photo feel grittier or a portrait feel more dreamy and nostalgic.
I love that. It's like you said earlier, retraining your eye to see the potential instead of just focusing on what might be considered imperfections.
Exactly. And you know, another thing the ebook talks about that I really connected with is the idea of going beyond filters.
Yes. It's so tempting to just slap on a filter and call it a day, right?
Right. But there's a difference between just using a filter and actually understanding how to create a stunning black and white image from the ground up.
Totally. And the ebook talks about how important it is to draw inspiration from those iconic black and white photographers.
Yes. Like Ansel Adams, Dorothy Lange. Their work is just incredible.
I know. But I have to admit, it feels a little intimidating to even think about applying those techniques to my phone photos.
I hear you. But remember, no one is expecting you to go out and buy a darkroom and start developing your own prints.
Equilibrio.
What's so fascinating about photographers like Ansel Adams is that they were masters of pre-visualization.
Mm.
Even before taking the picture, they had a vision for what the final print would look like.
Wow, that's amazing. But we're talking about quick snaps on our phones, not exactly meticulously planning out every detail.
Right. But the principle still applies. It's about taking that extra moment to really see the scene in front of you, to think about how the light and shadows are interacting. Even with your phone, you can pause and observe and imagine how those elements would translate into a black and white image.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like you're tapping into a different way of seeing.
Exactly. You're no longer just pointing and shooting. You're actually thinking like a photographer.
So much of this is about mindset then, about slowing down and really engaging with what you're photographing.
Absolutely. And of course, a little bit of technical know-how never hurts,
Right.
which is why the ebook also delves into the world of editing.
Yes. And I have to say, when I first saw the editing section, I was a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, there are a lot of different apps and techniques out there.
It's true. But if I had to pick one key takeaway from that whole section, it would be the importance of understanding contrast.
Contrast is essential in all types of photography, but it's especially crucial in black and white.
It's like the ebook said. It's about controlling the difference between the lightest lights and the darkest darks. When you think about it that way, it just clicks.
It's about creating that sense of depth and drama by playing with those extremes.
And a well-balanced contrast can make your subject really stand out even without color.
Exactly. Think about a classic black and white portrait. A lot of times it's that interplay of light and shadow on the person's face that makes the image so captivating.
It's like what we were talking about with noise earlier, right? It's not always about making things perfectly clear or technically perfect. Sometimes those imperfections that push and pull between light and dark, that's where the real magic happens.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's what gives the image its mood, its story.
You know, going through this ebook and having this conversation is really making me realize how much I get caught up in thinking about all the things I need to get better at as a photographer.
It's easy to get bogged down by that. Trust me, I've been there.
Instead of just like enjoying the process, just having fun with it.
I think that's something a lot of us struggle with.
I'm right.
And not just in photography, but in any creative pursuit.
So true. We're always striving for perfection instead of just embracing the journey.
Exactly. And, that's one of the things I appreciate about capturing moments in monochrome. It reminds us that at the end of the day, it's not about technical perfection. It's about capturing those moments that resonate with you.
Yes. And speaking of resonating, I loved that the ebook included a what people are saying section.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the usual, oh, this was well written or I learned a lot.
It was more than that.
It was like people talking about how this approach to photography actually changed how they see the world.
Wow. That's powerful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole conversation so exciting to me. It's not just about the technical stuff. It's about tapping into this whole different way of seeing.
And isn't that what real art does?
Yeah,
It helps us see the familiar with fresh eyes.
exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into capturing moments in monochrome, what's one thing you hope our listeners take away from this? If they only remember one thing, what's the nugget you want them to hold on to?
Okay, so I love to do this little thought experiment, and maybe our listeners will too. Think about a place you see every day, right? Like your commute, your neighborhood,
Right.
whatever's part of your routine. Now imagine taking all the color away. What details pop out? What stories emerge? I think that's the magic of monochrome.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us see the everyday as something extraordinary.
I love that. It's like a challenge to slow down and really pay attention.
Yeah.
As someone who can get a little too caught up and always trying to get things perfect, I need that reminder to just appreciate those everyday moments.
It's so easy to get caught up in the chaos of it all.
Hey,
But then you strip away the color, and you're left with something so raw and honest.
it's true. Well, this has been so eye-opening. I know I'm going to be looking at the world through a different lens from now on. To all our listeners, if you're even a little bit intrigued by this idea of capturing moments in monochrome, we highly recommend checking out the ebook Capturing Moments in Monochrome. It's your guide to unlocking a whole new world of photographic possibilities, and you can do it all through the lens of your phone.
That's right. What are you waiting for?
Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep.